Well, I hope you've got your credit card handy for the upcoming release, Outlaws of Thunder Junction. We have an epilogue booster included within the set. Big score. Now this set consists solely of Mythic cards, 35 of them, which we'll be going through the remainder of today. This is part 6 within our Outlaws of Thunder Junction spoiler series, all conveniently located in a playlist if you want to check those other vids out for my thoughts and opinions on the rest of the set. All right, thank you for watching. I hope you have a magical day. Like, comment, subscribe, become a YouTube member, join the community Discord, come say hello and make some new friends, and let's take a look at some of the newest cards for Magic the Gathering.
It's a new lap record!
Here we are. As aforementioned, they're all mythics. 35 mythics. Wow. So let's get into it. Loading the first up here is I will need a translation done, and I guess my internet is a little bit slow today. All right, so the Substitute Synthesizer is a 3-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or more enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/0 colorless artifact creature token. With this creature, gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. That's pretty good. So first and foremost, these cards are playable in Standard. They may not all have the value of a Mythic card, and that's really what we will be doing today, is differentiating between the most powerful Mythics and cards in this big set that we see from, you know, the average, right? Because not all Mythics are created equal. Some of them are just meant to be rare cards. They are not necessarily meant to win games. Yeah, it is what it is. You guys know what I mean. So anywho, entering the battlefield, scrying 2 for 3. Not terrible, right? It's definitely not award winning though. However, when another artifact with mana value 3 or less enters the battlefield under your control, 3 or more. Now that is an important distinction here. 3 or less is far more common than 3 or more. However, creating a 0/0 artifact, and it gets +1/+1 for each artifact that you control, is quite good, right? Because it itself is an artifact. It's going to make an artifact when you cast an artifact. So, you know, it's going to be 3/3, which is great. And the Scry 2 is not terrible, and potentially you're flickering it for more Scry 2s, and, you know, maybe your flicker is an artifact, right? With mana value 3 or more, and, you know, around and around we go. Is it worth the Mythic slot? Kind of reads like a rare card to me. I don't want to be too hard of a critic, but I think that we need to be, because that's all that we're dealing with today is Mythics. And, you know, I can't afford that many wild cards. I don't have that many. It's going to take a while to collect, so I really want to make sure that we're focusing on the most relevant ones first, right? Legion Foundry, 4/2 as an artifact, and whenever it enters the battlefield, 2 damage to any target. We can pay to tap it, sacrifice an artifact to create a 3/3. While creating 3/3s is not terrible, you know, I'm thinking of this in a Forge deck where you're just paying 2 to create a 3/3, as well as a 1/1 potentially. So that's fine. The ETB, 2 damage to any target, that's quite good as well, whether you're, you know, hitting a creature, a planeswalker, if those options don't exist to generate board state advantage, you know, hit the player, right? You know, so that's nice as well. Not terrible. 2 mana is good. Is it a mythic or is it a rare? Oh, that one is a little bit harder to dial in. I think it's still just a rare, though. I'm going to be saying that a lot today. Moving on, Loot the Key to Everything. For 3 mana, this is a 1/2 with Ward 1. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of types, among other, not including itself, non-land permanents you control, and you may play those cards this turn. This incentivizes a diverse board state, which is great. You know, running some enchantments, some artifacts, some planeswalkers, some creatures, right? To get the most of it, which isn't easy, but it is a good way to build decks, right? I don't mind. I think it's, it's a 1/2, which isn't great, but the Ward 1 is cool, and the amount of advantage that you can gain, I think, is fairly ridiculous. But where the card, like the art, right? Look at that little guy. Is that a red fox? Oh my lord. Moving on, Lotus Ring for 3. Say what? This is an equipment artifact with Indestructible. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has Vigilance, as well as being able to tap, sacrificing itself to add 3 mana of any one color, equipped for 3. This seems good. I'm certain that this can combo in somewhere where you're reducing the equip cost and you have things to sacrifice, and now you're just like generating mana willy-nilly. Hello! Is it a mythic? I think it might be. This is maybe one of those obscure mythics, right? Which is decent. Is it something that we're going to be putting into every deck that we build? No, it's not the One Ring. Is it still really good in an artifact deck? Oh, absolutely. And in other decks? Yes. Not terrible. Very good in, I guess, just an equipment deck, I suppose, right? The Grand Abolisher, 2 mana, 2/2. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. They can still get you with a Wandering Emperor, though, which sucks. But it's a human, which is great. It's also a cleric, meh. But I think that this is phenomenal. I would be mainboarding this in best of 1 in my humans deck, probably, just for the interaction limiter, as well as most certainly hanging it in my sideboard, right? Because, we see a lot of tempo decks, and even to a certain extent control decks, that really lose a lot of their advantage if not able to play at instant speed on their opponent's turn, right? When you're forcing them to play on their own turn, they're tapping their mana, and, now there's no interaction, right? Not that it would be allowed, but this is what is basically forcing that, and, they're now playing the game in contrast to their typical strategy, right? Hold up mana, interact with you, have, last say. So that's cool. I think it's going to be a great card that we'll see around. This is a reprint, rest in peace, but one that we so desperately needed. An enchantment for 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, exile all graveyards, and if a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. So all the Reanimator decks, just get out of here. Again, it's not a great card to play, but it goes in the sideboard and it dominates from there. The World Walker Helm, 3 mana, an artifact, and if you would create 1 or more artifact tokens, instead create that many tokens plus an additional map token. Meh. However, where it shines is the ability to pay 2 and tap to create a token that's a copy of target artifact token you control. Thousand Moon Smithy tokens, anyone? Yeah. Oh yeah. So we forgot to do the is it mythic for a few cards. Is it mythic? Yeah, probably. It's like a commander card, right? This would be your commander, I think. Maya's a little bit jealous of those cards. I've been giving it too much attention. Moving on, is the Ring a mythic? I think so. Is the Grand Abolisher mythic? Ooh, I don't know. It would be a rare and a really good rare, but a mythic? Maybe. Maybe. I can see it. I can see it. A very good rare or mythic? Sure. Rest in peace. Was this always a mythic? I feel like in my past life, this was a rare. So I don't know if I can agree there. Is it a good card? Yes. Does it deserve a mythic slot? Maybe not. The Helm? I can see it. I can see it. It's a really good rare. I think relatively justifiable, but again, you know, that could go either way. It's on the fence. Maybe rare. Maybe both rares here. So you can see that even though all these cards are mythic, you know, they're not all as good. And I know I've been cutting down a lot of them, but it's important to, you know, have a realistic outlook on these cards, right? Because, you know, it's easy to see the mythic symbol and be like, oh, man, that card's so crazy, right? But is it going to impact the game in a positive fashion? Or is it just, like, bait, you know? Memory Vessel for 5 as an artifact, tapping to exile itself. Each player exiles the top 7 cards of their library until the end of your next turn. Players may play cards they exile this way, and they can't play cards from their hand at sorcery speed. It's pretty expensive, 5 mana. You're getting access to those cards for 3 turns. Your turn that you do it at sorcery speed, their turn where they're now casting those cards, as well as your turn again, right? They will only get your turn and then their turn. No, they get the same amount. Technically, they would maybe not get the first turn because they should be tapped out, right? So you would get your turn, their turn, your turn, and they would get... But in that same argument, I guess, or thought pattern, you would be tapping out at some point as well within your mana base, right? But you could space those spells out, right? Maybe if we had something that was like opponents can't cast spells from exile, right? And you're using it in a lockout sense. Something like this would be good. And now they can't cast spells from exile. They can't cast spells from their hand because of this. And that's how we get the most out of it. I think that's probably the angle here, right? Is it a mythic card? Probably if used right. I mean, 7 cards? That's a little aggressive, no? 5 mana is heavy, but... not terrible. The Omen Path Journey for 4 mana as an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 4... library 4 up to 5 land cards that have different names. Ooh. Exile them, then shuffle, and at the beginning of your end step, choose a card at random, exiled with the journey, put it into the battlefield tapped. Very expensive, 4 mana. It's going to set you up with plenty of land drops for what I would assume is the rest of the game. How long could it possibly go? Great in land decks that are looking for specific lands, I suppose. Like the Field of Dead, for example. A mythic card? I don't know. It's at random, so you're not like you are having to choose 5 lands with different names. So to get the land that you want is still a 1 in 5, which would, like, you're gonna get it eventually, sure, but oh, I don't know if this is a mythic slot. It's at the beginning of your end step, which is good. So you're going to get an effect the same turn it enters, which makes it a little bit better, right? We can consider that a mail-in rebate on its mana cost, the CMC, or mana value, if you will, MV, from 4 to 3. And maybe that's better. Maybe that's better. And maybe it thinning your library is good too, of those lands. Then your main phase draws, or your upkeep draw, or whatever, is not a hello Simba, meow. It's not going to be a reduced chance at that. You know, I guess you could. No, I don't know. I think that's fine. It seems okay. Mythic, maybe. Probably a rare. But still pretty cool. Pest Control for 2 sorcery. Destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less. Cycling for 2. Is this a mythic? Great removal. All non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less. Yes, it's going to hit all the tokens. Phenomenal. You can cycle it if it's useless late game, because it's, you know, how many 1 or less are they going to have on turn 7, right? Unless they put down a bunch of tokens altogether. But then at that point, you've got access to field wipes anyways, and what have you, like your farewells and sunfalls. So I think the cycling makes it a little bit better. Maybe it could just have a draw card attached to it, right? Destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less, draw card, instead of the cycling. Is it a mythic? I don't think so. Oh, I don't think so, Billy. No, not for me. Rare, sure. Esoteric Duplicator for 3 mana, an artifact clue. And whenever you sacrifice it or another artifact, you may pay 2. If you do, at the beginning of your next end step, nice, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. Not terrible. We can pay 2 to sacrifice itself to draw a card. So it's nice that you can sacrifice other artifacts and then, you know, pay 2 to create a token that's a copy of it. Something that sacrifices the corpse cobble oddly is coming to mind. You're gonna sacrifice creatures and then create a zombie equal to the power of the sacrificed creatures, and so you could like sacrifice, you know, a token, an artifact token here with corpse cobble, get a creature, and then pay 2 to replace that creature. I don't know. Seems decent. I'm sure that could be pretty janky somewhere. Even the fact that it can sacrifice itself to draw a card for 2 and then create a copy also of itself for 2 that you could now like, it's good. I think this card is a mythic, maybe. Could be a rare, sure, but I see the mythic justification here much more so than a pest control, you know? Which does take care of the tokens that we'll be creating. I get it, but so does there's that Legion card, for example, and that's not a mythic, you know? 2 mana plus a cycling, though. It's cheap. Maybe. I don't know. I still don't think it's a mythic. Right? Molten Duplication for 2. Sorcery Speed. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature that you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types, and gains haste until the end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Well, it's definitely a rare. Mythic. Maybe Advanced Flashback. I mean, not terrible. You're forced to sack it. You could get around that. Maybe, I don't know, you're flinging it or you face it out. Forcing something into a token is worthwhile, right? So that's not terrible. and the sacrifice could be worse. Like maybe you capitalize on that sacrifice and you want that trigger, right? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Collector's Cage for 2, Hideaway 5. Again, all of the other Hideaway cards are rare. Let's see how this one is somehow better. Pay 1, tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. You mean kind of like Fight Rigging does automatically for free? And then if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may play the exiled card without its mana value. It's not that I don't like this card. I think it's great. But shouldn't it be a rare? There's a war on for your wild cards. Moving on, the Bristle Bud Farmer. Now, I actually like this card. This is something that I can definitely get behind. It's a 5/5. I love my 5 power deck. Woohoo! With Trample, even better. And when it enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens. That's nice. We can sacrifice those for 2 to gain 3 life. Furthermore, whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a food token. If you do, mill 3 cards, and you may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. Yes. Card draw. A 5/5 with Trample. Only 4 mana. Has the token generation, which isn't terrible. You are forced to sacrifice foods and not just artifacts or tokens. So that's maybe the downside here, but at the end of the day, it's a 5/5 for 4 with Trample. I'm running it. And the card draw is just a bonus, you know? It could say just draw 1 card, and it would be just as good. And you might get to draw 2. And maybe you making food draw more. Woo! Anyways, I get excited a little bit when I see Power 5. Delusions of Greed, I know, right? An enchantment for 4. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, gain 6 life. Oh! And create 3 2/1 black bat creatures with flying. What? Okay, so this might be a mythic. That's some value. Draw 3. Gain 6. Create 3 2/1s with flying. For 4. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And at the beginning of your end step, you may discard a card. You discard a card, lose 2 life, and sacrifice a creature. When it leaves the battlefield, you discard 3 cards, lose 6 life, and sacrifice 3 creatures. We have the, what's it called? The Raven or the Eagle, where you switch control. We have other cards that do this now as well. But you give you play it, and then you give it to your opponent, right? So then they have to deal with it. And ideally, once you've given it to them, then you remove it. Right? This is a mythic. I agree. I'm down to clown. I'm surprised it's not a curse. It's just an enchantment. Could have been an enchantment curse, but whatever. Cool. Forces you to, like, you know how we're giving the Arc Fiend to people, right? A similar thing, right? And it's in the colors, so that's cool. Cool beans. That actually, I think the farmer could get the mythic stamp because of the card draw. I would have loved to have seen, just artifact instead of forced the food, but whatever. Sure. The greed, absolutely. I think that deserves a mythic slot. The Tarnation Vista. This is a land. Entering the battlefield tapped. As it enters, choose a color. I think those are common lands that you're describing to me. Tapped, choose. Add 1 mana of the chosen color. Pay 1. Tap it for each color among monocolored permanents you control. Add 1 mana of that color. Well, that's good. Paying 1 to do it's not, right? Now you basically have to have 2 different monocolors to break even. What? Huh? So it's going to be a nah for me, dog. I get it. It could potentially generate a lot of value, but you have to pay 1 to do so. So now you are potentially operating, you know, with a tapped land. Yes, you can choose the color, and that's great for consistency. And choosing a single color is good for monocolor permanents. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm trying to discover its value. I don't want to just dismiss it. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. So, entering Tap Bomber, choosing color, good. Adding that mana, a given. Well, I guess not. It could, but why would you choose a color then? Because I could just add generic. But, and then, you know, potentially the extra mana. I just don't like how you have to pay 1 for it. Like, you're not really actually gaining value until you have 3 monocolor permanents. And you can max out at 5, so it's like, I don't know. I'd probably maybe just run a dual land. Food for thought, is it a mythic? I don't think so. Hostile, and I don't even think that's a rare land. Can I get a refund? Hey, thanks for the support, homie. Sorry, I should have left. I like to read them too. Hostile Investigator for 4. This is a 4/3, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Okay, and whenever one or more player discards 1 or more cards, investigate. That's the creation of a clue. You can pay 2, sacrifice it to draw a card. That's not bad. Is it a mythic? Maybe, if it had Death Touch. Right? Or something. The discard is good. That makes it a rare for sure. And the draw makes it arguably a mythic. I don't mind it. It's much better in comparison than the Tarnation Vista as far as I'm concerned. If I'm ill-informed, enlighten me in the comments below. Let's get into our next card. This will be the Sandstorm Retriever. Pardon my interwebskis. Sandstorm Salvager is a 3-mana 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, we will create a 3/3 Golem artifact creature token. Furthermore, paying 2, tapping it to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature token that we control, which is a bit of a bummer not putting it on itself. Right? On the token that it generates, though, is great. And they're going to also gain trample until the end of turn. So really, a token support engine, if you will. I would love to see it put a +1 counter on all creatures that you control, not just creature tokens. But if you're running a token deck, that's fine. Giving them trample is, you know, a huge plus as well. Does it deserve the mythic slot over a rare? I don't think so. We can compare it to the Blade Splicer, and that's a rare as well, right? So, you know, that's why we're going through all these cards, because these are going to melt your wild cards, and we don't necessarily want that, right? Moving on, we have the Lost Jitty. It's a 1 mana, and this artifact equipment will be equipped for 1, and whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a counter on it. We can remove a counter at instant speed, willy-nilly, which is kind of crazy. To untap target land. Nice. Target creature can't block this turn, not bad. Or put a +1/+1 counter on the equipped creature. And, you know, I don't think that's bad whatsoever. 1 mana, equipped for 1, remove counters, instant speed, 3 options, one of which is untap your lands. I think there's like land that tap for multiple mana. I don't know. Something. Harvester of Misery for 5 as a 5/4 with Menace. And when it enters the battlefield, other creatures get -2/-2 until the end of turn. Furthermore, we can pay 2 to discard it. Target creature gets -2/-2 until the end of turn. It's a spirit, which is decent. So I would imagine that you discard this to remove, then you reanimate it to remove, and then you've got a 5/4 to attack. Is it a mythic? Probably not. Probably just a rare. Generous Plunderer for 2 mana as a 2/2. With Menace, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may create a treasure token. When you do, target opponent creates a tapped treasure token. Whenever the Plunderer attacks, deal damage to defending player equal to the number of artifacts that they control. Good artifact hate. They will most likely instant speed on the stack or before the, sacrifice, because you don't have to pay mana to sacrifice treasures, right? They can do that willy-nilly. Yeah. The ramp is cool. I think your opponent would welcome the mana, honestly. And even if they didn't, they would just tap them on the stack so they didn't have negative consequence. However, if they have other artifacts, this is going to be a great card, right? If they're an artifact deck, look out, right? Ancient Cornucopia, 3 mana artifact. Whenever you cast a spell that's 1 or more colors, you gain 1 life for each of that spell's colors. Do this only once each turn. Okay, and then it taps to add mana of any color. Oh! I think it's a mythic, chat. I think we found ourselves a mythic. 3 mana tap for any color. Plus, it's a life gain engine. So you're gaining 2 life. Maybe 3. Potentially 4 or 5, but I doubt it. I honestly don't mind that. It's, it's not crazy, but it's like pretty good. Nice consistency, some life gain. Maybe not a mythic, maybe just a rare. Oh man, all of these cards are just like not mythic worthy, Some of them are pretty good, but I have my doubts. Moving on, the Fomori Vault is a land that taps for 1 generic mana. We can pay 3, tap it, discard a card. Look at the top X cards of our library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of them into your hand, the other in the bottom of the deck in random order. Well, it's good. The generic mana is a bummer. The draw engine is great, though. Right? It's not bad. Yeah, so is it worth a mythic? I don't think so. It's a rare land. Is the Cornucopia mythic? No, it's rare, comparable to the Celestis. The equipment, I think this could definitely be mythic, though. I get behind this being a mythic. Absolutely. Moving on, the Territory Forge for 5, an artifact. And when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, exile target artifact or land. What? Exile land? It's a good thing it's so expensive. The Forge has all activated abilities of the exiled card. You could flicker this. Right? Flicker Adelphia and just eat their land base away turn by turn. It's non-legendary. You can copy it. And you can just play multiples of it as well. Okay. Worth the mythic? Maybe. You can hit basics that hold ossification. That's good too. It's a rare for sure. Mythic maybe, doubtable. But that's like all of these cards, right? So, that's it. That's the big score. The rest of these are commander cards. Again, if you're interested in commander content, hit me up. I'm happy to review the commander decks for you. I just need to make sure that there is an audience for it first. So hit me up if you want breakdowns of those cards and decks. The big score, all mythics that we've seen today, doing our best to determine which ones are really worth that mythic slot, right? Which ones stand above. I like the Forge. It's pretty cool and a lot of fun. You're building around it, right? I like the Sword or the Lost Jitty. I think that's phenomenal. That's quite good. Hostile Investigator, not bad. The Greed is really, really cool, but needs to be played in a specific way, which is decent. The Bristle Bud Farmer, you know, that's me, you know. And then, you know, like the Duplicator's really cool. You know, the Helm is really cool. The Abolisher is actually great. That's one of the better cards that we've seen, I think, playable in Constructed, right? In Standard that you'd look to collect. Yeah, just like a lot of mediocre mythics, which is a bit of a bummer, right? Because, you know, they're hard to collect, right? And they're fun to experience. And when we are trying to prioritize our wild cards on the appropriate purchases or unlocks, you know, it's just like a lot of noise, which is a bit of a bummer. Okay, so let me know if any of these cards are absolutely outstanding to you and I've totally misinterpreted them, okay, in the comments below. Thank you all so much for your time and attention. Of course, the early access event is on the 10th, just a few days, maybe even today by the time you're watching this, and playable for everyone on the 10th, and sorry, on the 16th, and then a standard tabletop legal on the 19th. All right, so 10th event, 16th packs unlock for everyone, 19th tournament legal. Okay, cool beans. Vault cards here with the Vault Door, playable in Standard, but maybe not worth your wild cards. Okay, we also seen the Cage symbol. Now these are just cosmetics, legal in the formats in which they are already legal. Okay, just reprints, and then of course the regular set symbol, the cowboy hat. Now we've gone through all of these cards in previous videos. Check those out. Again, thank you so much. Have a magical day, and I'll see you soon in the next.